Hi everyone. So for my project, I built a Raspberry Pi 4 system that functions as a LAMP server with a RAID storage array. And so I did the one that was pre-approved. And the main goal of this project was to show how a small device such as a Raspberry Pi can be used to build a system that behaves like a real-world server. Even though it's small, it can still run professional grade stuff. And basically, I chose this project because it combines two ideas: web hosting through a LAMP stack and data reliability through RAID storage. Together, they show how modern servers are designed for both performance and fault tolerance. So this project connects directly to several Pi components that we learned in 176. So first, with the CPU architect, I have the Raspberry Pi 4, which is an ARM-based processor, which follows a smaller design that makes it more efficient and compared to like traditional desktop processors like my HP Pavilion. And it's ideal for running servers like Apache and MySQL without using a lot of power. Secondly, with memory and processing, the system uses RAM to temporarily store active things such as web requests and database queries, and this shows how memory is critical for multitasking and server performance. And thirdly, the input-output part of this, I used SanDisk 32GB hard drives that connect through a USB 3.0 port, and it kind of handles the communications between the CPU and the external hardware in the traditional computer. And the storage and RAID implementation of this, I use software RAID through Linux using MDAVM, and instead of relying on the hardware RAID, this operating system manages disk redundancy, and this shows that software controls hardware resources to improve reliability, to be honest. And fifthly, with the networking, the Raspberry Pi uses the Ethernet cable to serve like web pages over HTTP, and this involves multiple layers of networking, including IP addressing, TCP communications, and application layer services like Apache. And finally, the LAMP stack software that ties everything together. Linux acts as the operating system. Apache handles web requests. MySQL stores and retrieves data. And these all show how a layered software system depends on each other to function correctly. And to complete this Pi project, I followed the two guides on Brightspace and combined them into a full setting running process. So first, I prepared my Pi by updating all the packages, ensured it was connected through the internet. And next, I installed a LAMP stack, which included things like Apache, MariaDB, and PHP. And after installing those, I tested the Apache server by entering the IP address, and I took the IP address into a web browser and confirming that the default page loaded correctly. And next, I installed WordPress and configured it to connect to the MySQL database. This allowed me to run a dynamic website on the Raspberry Pi. And after that, after the web server was working, I moved on to the storage part. So I connected my two hard drives into the Raspberry Pi using the USB 3.0 ports. And then after that, I installed the MDAVM tool and created a RAID array. And it monitors, it mirrors data access across both drives for redundancy. And after I created the array, I formatted it and mounted it so the operating system could be used as storage. And then finally, I verified the RAID array was active and stable and ensured it could be used to store files or backups. And the guides are pretty easy on Brightspace. It just had me follow simple instructions that were very easy to follow. And another one, they're very easy instructions to and from. And nextly, now it's showing how it works. So first, I show the Raspberry Pi running, connected. Bad boy's connected to the computer. Nextly, I'll show you the web browser I made. Little blog, little database, has multiple things I can do. It's pretty simple, to be honest. And then here's the terminal, right? made the RAID array.
It's not what I wanted. Alright, see ya.
And then, yeah, I basically, that made the first website made me confirm LampStack with the install WordPress, and yeah, it's pretty simple for running. And troubleshooting wise, during this project, I ran into several issues. One of the issues was permissions. When running some of the commands, some installations would not work until I added the command sudo, and it showed me like how privileged the Linux system works. And another issue I ran into during RAID was during the RAID setup. At one point, the device did not appear immediately after creation. So, and then after that, I learned that the RAID array was still syncing in the background, so I had to wait because it took some time to load and stuff. And sometimes I also had difficulty in identifying the correct disk name for my external hard drives. It was pretty easy, like the names could have been blah 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 1 or blah 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 2. And so I solved this by using the lsblk command to correctly identify each device before creating the array. And I can actually show that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, that should be good.
Right here.
Yeah.
Names of all the devices.
Wanna talk real quick about some ERC stuff over there before I go? Yeah.
And then lessons learned from this project. I learned how this multi-system component work together in a real web server environment, how the Pi works. I've never worked with Pi before, so it was pretty interesting learning in this class. I gained a better understanding of how hardware operates and how operating systems, storage systems, and networking all interact to create a working web server. And if I were able to do this again, I would plan the storage setup earlier and probably just write code slower, because I was going way too fast. I had a bunch of syntax error came up, and I thought I kind of messed up a few times. And so yeah, everything. I'm pretty proud of my project. If you notice the eye, I have some allergies, so thank you very much.